Hey guys, Michael here with another episode on Star Wars News and Views. Today I thought we'd just do something a little bit different and just sort of give my views on Infinity War. Me and Patrick had planned to do this together on the weekend, but he had some family emergency that he had to take care of and wasn't able to. So, I just thought I'd do this on my own because why not? This is going to be spoilers, just because I think anyone interested enough to be watching this has already seen it, and in case there's one or two that haven't, I'll just give my sort of spoiler-free sort of summation right at the beginning here. And overall, I thought it was pretty good. It was pretty good. I did not absolutely love it. It was not perfect by any means, but like most Marvel movies, it was pretty good. It's fine. I'm not what you would call a Marvel fanboy by any means, but I've seen every single MCU film except for Black Panther, and I grew up reading Marvel comic books. I've spent hundreds of dollars on Marvel comic books, so I'm not just some casual newbie. This is something that I've spent a lot of my life investing in, this universe. So to be honest, I mostly read Spider-Man, but I picked up the odd issue of Avengers and X-Men here and there. A lot of the spin-offs from the Spider-Man universe, like Venom had his own comic series in the 90s because, edgy 90s stuff. And Carnage even had a short-run series. That was also the same time that Boba Fett had his own comic series, which that was Dark Horse, not Marvel, though, but it was that mid-90s sort of, attitude. So having said that, taking an honest look at this, it's kind of, it's fine. It's not the greatest thing I've ever seen. It's definitely not in the top 5 best MCU movies, but it's good. I think the biggest thing I have with this is that it's very predictable and it's very safe. It gives the MCU fans and the Marvel fans like me exactly what you want and exactly what you're expecting. There's nothing surprising about that. People say the ending is very bold, but it's not. If you've read the Infinity War, Infinity Gauntlet comic, that's how the comic goes. We knew it was, given that it was a two-parter, it was easy to figure out, okay, that the structure of part 1 is going to be Thanos snaps his fingers, and I thought it was going to end with him snapping and then cut to black, which is the way the comic was. They actually went on and showed you a little, they dragged it out a little bit. And there was a couple of unexpected things, but, all these characters that died, almost all of them are going to come back, so there really is no stakes and no gravitas once you, in the moment, it's like, whoa, these characters are going away. But if you really stop and think about it, almost every single one of them is going to come back at least for the next film, and I'll go into my thoughts on what the next one's going to be like in a few minutes. But it's a very difficult film to evaluate on the basis of a film. As a film, I would say this is not a great film. I would say it's kind of average, but I don't think you can evaluate this as a film. It's more like the season finale of a TV season, or a giant-sized comic annual. Every comic series would have an annual double-sized issue where it was like this crazy plot with all these characters and the stakes were a bit higher. Or if you're hoping to get something out of it as its own 3-act narrative, you're going to be kind of lost. If you've never seen an MCU film, or if you've only seen, I've seen 2 or 3, don't even bother with this. You will get absolutely nothing out of this movie. It's a 2.5-hour movie with a very simple story and almost no character development, except for Thanos and Thor gets an arc, and that's about it. And it's a real punch fest with huge spectacles and special. This whole movie must have been shot on a green screen. And that's the honest truth of this movie. And I don't even mean that as a criticism. I mean that just objectively, yeah, that's kind of what it is, because all the storyline was always kind of thin, but it had been kind of built up a little bit, so that this doesn't seem like it's totally out of nowhere. I don't think they built it up well enough, but at least there's precedent. And the character development is the previous 18 films. Those are 18 episodes of a TV series. Marvel has basically constructed a big budget TV series where every episode has the budget of a feature film. I always thought about this when I was younger, why can't they just do a television show and have every episode have the quality of a feature film? Because in the 90s you started getting stuff like X-Files and when 24 came out, where it was kind of, and then HBO shows like Sopranos. It was almost like a feature film, but you could tell that the budget wasn't there, and you could tell that they could never do sort of a blockbuster television series, fantasy stuff. Game of Thrones is the closest thing I think we've ever got. But Marvel has now done that, but instead of releasing it on TV, they've released it in theaters. And it's basically, this is the 19th or whatever, 19th episode of a long-running, interconnected television series. And it's unfair to go into this and evaluating this as its own thing, disconnected from those previous 18 or 19 films. Whatever it is, 18, 17, whatever it is. Just as you can't watch the season finale of a TV show and be like, who's that guy? What's that guy? I don't understand. What's this guy trying to do? Like, there's no development. This guy's just introduced and there's no background on him. Yeah, you can't. That would be unfair, right? That's stupid. The unfortunate thing is that because this is a feature film, you kind of expect it to abide by feature film rules. And this doesn't abide by the rules of a movie. And that's why I say as a movie, this is actually not very good. But I think it's unfair to say that this is a movie beyond the fact that, oh, this is more than a movie, it's an event. Yes, it's more than a movie, it's a spectacle, it's an event. There have been plenty of movies like that. But I don't think there have been movies that have been kind of developed at this long of a time span, over 10 years and 18 films. So I'm really kind of still struggling with how to evaluate this. And also, the structure of this movie is very, very strange. It's very, it doesn't have a 3-act structure. It does, but it's like, it feels like a collection of scenes. This scene happens, and then this scene happens, and then this scene happens. And that's because there's 30 plus characters in it. The fact that you're making a movie with 30 characters to varying degrees of significance, but still, they all get their screen time and certain lines of dialogue. That's like, even Robert Altman wasn't that gutsy. But Robert Altman made movies that were just about people in the room talking, so you could still have the character development. But this is action, and like I said, it's a bit of a punch fest, and that's something I have a criticism of. I wish there was a bit slower and a little bit more character focused. Thor gets an interesting arc. And so does Thanos, and it's basically Thanos' movie, and I'm really glad they went that route. That was kind of what I was expecting, but you never know. But I'll get into that. Okay, so that's, I think I've avoided any major spoilers, so for those few people out there watching this without having seen it, that's my spoiler-free. So this is full-on spoilers from here on out. So I guess the main thing that surprised me is that they didn't kill off Captain America and Tony Stark. I imagine they probably will be in the next film, and the main thing is, like, we knew that these actors' contracts were coming to an end, and that this might be the last time that they'd be playing these roles. But given that this is part 1 of 2, it was always up for debate that, you know, they would maybe stick around for the sequel. And given that like I said, we didn't know, but I didn't expect anything other than the film to end with Thanos snapping his fingers. And I thought maybe that would be, Thanos would, you know, punch to death Tony Stark. And they kind of went that route at the end where he gets, like, impaled, which he should be dead from, but whatever. And that was maybe a fake out. But then Captain America, surprisingly, isn't in this very much. And the whole thing, like, killing Loki, that wasn't really a shock, because I think they've got their use out of Loki. All these characters could be brought back, because in part 2 of this, whatever the 4th Avengers film is going to be called, they're going to do some sort of time travel type of thing, because we've seen in leaked photos that they recreated the scenes from Avengers, and you see Captain America in his Avengers 2012 era uniform. So they're doing something with the timeline in the second one where they have to, like, undo and sort of, I think they're going to do sort of a Back to the Future part 2 where they sort of revisit certain events from the previous films and sort of start changing things, and that's going to be how they mess around with Thanos. Anyway, though, so all these characters' deaths could be undone, but I think some of the early ones they won't, because after Loki gets killed, Thor says, I think it's for real this time, sort of addressing viewers. But I think Marvel got their use out of that character and then some, and I'm sure Tom Hiddleston, probably his contract's ending. Heimdall, does anyone even remember that character? I'm always like, Idris Elba was in Marvel movies? Yeah, he's in like 3 of them. Now 4. Yeah, so no one's missing him. No one really remembers he exists. Gamora was the surprising one, because I'm like, oh, really? Guardians of the Galaxy's just taking off, and you're getting rid of her? Wow, that was like I'm sad for Guardians 3 because I was really looking forward to that because I love the first two so much. They're among my favorites. But then you realize that he didn't kill her in real life. She went into the Soul Stone, so she is kind of alive. And James Gunn has said that Gamora will be explored and a big part of Guardians of the Galaxy 3. So she's coming back. She's not dead. She's in the Soul Stone, and she'll be in Guardians 3. So that's going to be undone. And then all the characters at the end that turn to ash, they're all, you think, we know Spider-Man Homecoming's coming out. We know that. We know Black Panther 2 is coming out, right? We know that. So none of those characters will count. But what's interesting is that among the characters who are left alive are the original 6 Avengers from 2012. I guess Hawkeye, we don't know because he's not in this film, but we can only assume. Because you got Scarlett Johansson, you got Chris Evans, Mark Ruffalo, Robert Downey Jr. The original Avengers and Chris Hemsworth are the ones that are left, among others. And so all those actors, their contracts are all coming to an end, and the 4th film, part 2 of this, will probably be their last film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Definitely for Chris Evans, because he's talked about how he's looking forward to leaving. Robert Downey Jr., I think he has a lot of fun coming in and doing cameos, like in Spider-Man. He might want to stick around, but I think they're going to give him like a swan song where he's going to go out in the blaze of glory. And I think what they're going to do is a majority of these people are going to somehow use their combined powers to make a sacrifice, and that's how Thanos is finally going to be stopped. And Doctor Strange has implied, he willingly gives the stone to Thanos to save Tony Stark. He's seen this 16 million outcomes, and there's only one where they win. So it has to do with either Tony Stark living or giving the time stone to Thanos, or both. And to me, that implies that Tony Stark has to be alive to make some kind of noble sacrifice. Like they try to tease in every Marvel movie. They did it in Avengers. They did it in like Iron Man 3, kind of, where you thought maybe this was going to be the end of him. Civil War kind of played around with expectations of that. No, I think this is going to be for real this time. And definitely with Chris Evans, I think he's going to go, and which is a shame because those two characters of Tony Stark and Captain America are sort of the leaders of the Avengers in our real world as a movie franchise and within the universe. And I think Chris Hemsworth is done now. I think he's going to be done too. And I wonder if they're going to reintroduce female Thor. And Mark Ruffalo, I don't know. Mark Ruffalo and Scarlett Johansson. Scarlett Johansson's rumored to be finally getting the Black Widow movie, but it could be a prequel or like a movie set in between the sequels and in between the existing movies and not a sequel to this. So she might be done. Mark Ruffalo could be done. And I think I figured out the way that they're going to get... And Jeremy Renner, he regretted it from day one, and he's not even in this. Don't expect to see Hawkeye again. So how do you get rid of Hawkeye? Just kill him or let him go off and do his own thing. Jeremy Renner's done. He doesn't care. Audiences don't care. Scarlett Johansson, she could be done. You could kill her, or I think you'd have to kill her actually because she can't be still around. Otherwise, she'd have to be involved in the movies. So if Scarlett Johansson is done, which she might be, and then doing a Black Panther prequel series could be something she could do to stay in the films. That would work. Thor. Recently in the comic books, the character of Thor was replaced by I think it's his sister? It's a female Thor. So that would be one way of keeping the essence of the character of Thor, but have a different person, because he's a god. You could say he's reincarnated as a woman. I don't know if that would work. But you could have his sister who takes up his hammer, and it's just like, okay, I'm now the one wielding the hammer, and I am the new Thor. Okay. Mark Ruffalo. What happens when he leaves? You can't get rid of Hulk, right? And Hulk is a CG character as the Hulk, so it's perfect to keep him around indefinitely. But what happens in the comics, when I was a kid, they had the Grey Hulk, and that's where Bruce Banner and Hulk merged. So he was embodied the Hulk, but he had still the mind and the personality of Bruce Banner to a degree. So you could have something where, I don't know, Bruce Banner merges into the Hulk, so you get rid of Mark Ruffalo, and then still keep the CG character of the Hulk, but maybe Mark Ruffalo could voice it. Or maybe, I don't know, who does the actual Hulk? Is it Mark Ruffalo? It doesn't matter. Whoever, they can find a sound alike. And then in the future phase, they could split him back into Bruce Banner, and when they do that, it's not Mark Ruffalo anymore, and that would be suffice to explain why it's a new actor. It's like, oh, because once we split him, it wasn't exactly the same. So that's my prediction for that. I think that'd be a good way of doing that. Captain America has died in the comics, and other people have, taken up his shield, and they'll probably do that, but they might give him a rest for a little while. And then Tony Stark, Iron Man, was replaced by a girl called Iron Heart in the comics rather recently. And they could go that route, or they could just retire the character for the next phase, retire Captain America for the next phase, and just not have Ironheart, and then just have them gone, and then bring back in Iron Man by way of Ironheart, and just have Captain America sit it out until the day where they totally reboot the franchise, because they probably will eventually, or find some sort of way of rewinding the timeline, and then they can recast everyone and have a fresh start like they do in the comics. So that's my prediction, is that the original 6 Avengers, entirely, or partially at least, but probably entirely, if I was designing it, that's the way I would do it, will have to make some sacrifice. And then it'll be, and that will bring back the other characters as well, and then the films will carry on with those characters. And so who's going to be in the next Avengers if the original 6 are taken out? Also, one more thing is that Ant-Man and the Wasp, I think, will be coming back in, and I think between Ant-Man and the Wasp and the Quantum Realm and Captain Marvel, that's going to be how they start doing weird paradoxes. And especially with Ant-Man and the Wasp, if they're in the Quantum Realm, quantum entanglement, where you could be in 2 states at once, so that could be an explanation for how they survive Thanos snapping his fingers, is that, because they were in quantum entanglement, they're alive, dead, they can traverse through worlds and time, and they can have Captain Marvel doing that. So I think those are going to be the way into doing this time reality bending thing that they're going to be probably doing for Avengers 2. Or Avengers 4, sorry. And Ant-Man and the Wasp are actually part of the original 2 Avengers in the comic books. If the first issue of Avengers, it's Ant-Man and the Wasp, and I can't remember the other ones, like Thor and Spider-Man. So that'll be really cool. I think they're going to throw that in there at the end. There'll be a moment where the original, is it 6 or 8 Avengers from the first issue of the comics will have a mission at the end together. And maybe they're going to be the ones that stop Thanos. That would be a good callback for comic book fans. Yeah, so overall, in terms of the movie, Josh Brolin was great. I thought the CG in this was, okay. I hear everyone going on about how amazing the CG was on Thanos. I thought he was, it was pretty good, but it still had that cartoony look to it. It wasn't like, oh, this is a real person. It was Josh Brolin's performance that sold it as a real person. But like most Marvel movies, it has a colorful, larger-than-life feel to it, so I got away with it, unlike Justice League, for example. And it also makes sense from the clips I've seen of Black Panther. The CG in that movie is crap, and I think the reason is because that was the B team, because Marvel pulled all the A-listers in visual effects to work on Infinity War. Because I feel like almost every single scene in this film, except for maybe on the Guardian's ship, was shot in front of a green screen to one degree or another. It looks like an expensive film, and the spectacle of it, for that reason, it's a lot of fun, and just to see something like this that's so big, so many characters. For that reason alone, the film works as the culmination of a 10-year, basically, story trajectory, and building directly into this ever since the end of Avengers 1. The first phase of Marvel kind of feels almost like a different company now when you look back at it. So really, the modern MCU kind of, for me, begins in the first Avengers film. As a part of a larger whole, I think it's pretty good. What could the Russo brothers do with what's on their plate? You have to introduce these characters and have these characters come together, 30 people. You have to have, it's kind of a heist movie, like they've said, where Thanos has to get this stone, then this stone, then this stone. This character has to die, that character has to die, and you still have to have a bit of an arc. There's so much that this movie had to do that the fact that this isn't a total mess is really impressive. I don't think the movie totally worked. I would rank this right now as, just as a movie, just turn it on, watch a movie. It's probably a 6.5 out of 10, but that's why I say I don't know if this is a movie. And I don't mean that as a point of criticism, not like, you know, Michael Bay's Transformers, they're not even movies. They're kind of not. But this is, the way this is structured and the way this is built and what this film had to do and its sort of place in a larger whole, I don't think this is really qualifies as a movie. So do I judge it as a movie? As a spectacle, as a blockbuster, this is like, yeah, this is as spectacular as a blockbuster will ever get. So it's yeah, if you're a Marvel fanboy, you won't be disappointed. This film plays it safe. It gives you exactly what you want. Every character gets their moment. The ones that don't, like Captain America, has like 2 lines, but I imagine if I'm right in the big 6 are like the main players in the next film, then that'll be balanced out in that film. For the most part, it has tons of action. I will say this, despite my complaints about the story being thin and, yeah, 30 characters and almost no character development, I was never bored. At any point, I was never bored, and I complained, oh, it's a bit of a punch fest. It is. And there's tons of plot holes, like why does Thanos even fight anyone if you can just turn people to spaghetti and turn back time, you know? Nothing. Once he gets the reality stone, you almost don't even need the other stones. It's like he can bend reality. Why doesn't he just go get the stones that way? But then you'd have no movie, obviously. Yeah, it's fine. Like I said, it's fine. It's, as a movie, it's like, I would rank it above Age of Ultron, but maybe just below Civil War. I'd have to see it maybe one more time. I only saw Civil War one more time. I felt the same way. I was like, wow, that was fun. I never thought I'd see all those people together. That was cool. Okay, moving on. Despite me being such a big Marvel Comics fan, I'm not a huge fanboy of these movies. They're all good, though. Like, there's nothing I can say about them. Even the ones I would consider to be the worst was like Iron Man 2 and Thor 2 and Thor 1, and they're fine. They're okay. I don't think they're as bad as some people say. And I also worked on one of the MCU movies. I was a part of the camera crew on The Incredible Hulk, even though that's sort of the odd duck now because it's like partially retconned, but not entirely. I'm in the credits. I'm listed as a camera trainee because that was during my union apprenticeship as a camera assistant. So I worked on that film and, you know, filmed part of, you know, the fight between Hulk and Abomination, and I met Lou Ferrigno and stuff like that, anyway, yeah, that was a crazy shoot. So, like, and, you know, I realize these things are just movies. Maybe it's because I came from a background in the film industry. I never put even Star Wars, I don't put it totally on that pedestal. I know they're just movies, and they're interesting as movies, as constructions, as things that are made by people, and the compromises and, you know, the blood, sweat, and tears that goes into making a movie. I'm aware of the artifice of it. So yeah, I don't hold this as even, I would say, top 5. If you want me to rank my favorite Marvel films so you know where I'm coming from, I don't know if these are not ranked in order. I don't have a particular favorite. I would say Thor Ragnarok and Guardians of the Galaxy, and Avengers, first one. And that's a movie that is just very rewatchable. It was just, for its time, I feel like that was more significant than this film. But it's similar to this in that, you know, it's very weak on plot and stuff like that. But I feel like that film had more character and stuff. And then Winter Soldier, I would say, is the best made Marvel film. And that was the first film by the Russo brothers. I think that's still their best one. And then in 5th place, I would have to put maybe Iron Man 1. Still holds up. I don't know. So the bulk of the MCU, I would put in this category, which is that mid-tier of like, yeah, they're fine. Some are better than others, but they're all worth watching once. Like, you know, Iron Man 3 and Spider-Man Homecoming. Anyway, so Avengers Infinity War. It's good. It's not great. It's predictable, but that's kind of part of the fun. And it is fun. Like I said, 2.5 hours. It doesn't feel like it at all. I'll give it credit. Last Jedi it went by fast. It didn't quite feel like 2.5 hours. But it still felt like it was over 2 hours. This movie, I was surprised. It felt like the same length as the original Avengers movie, and that was like 2 hours and 10 minutes or whatever. So that's very impressive. And it never felt totally convoluted or like just a greatest hits reel or anything like that. Like I said, the pacing or the construction is very odd. It does feel like a collection of scenes. Well, yeah, so that's kind of my take on the MCU. Let me know how you guys would rank it or any thoughts that you have on it. I have to say I'm very looking forward to the next films, as predictable as this movie was, and doing exactly what I thought it'd be doing, while actually accomplishing nothing, because all the characters are going to come back, and Thanos will be defeated, and all that 500,000 deaths in the universe are going to be undone. So I think the lasting legacy will be in Part 4, where those original 6 Avengers will be taken out of the MCU. I think that's the real significance of the Infinity War duo of films. This film is the main thing about this film is 30 characters in one film, and that's the sort of premises of why you should see this film. Not for the character development, because there almost is none. Not for the story, because it's pretty thin. The action scenes aren't even all that well done. I think they're okay, but the real reason is that 30 characters in one film, and it's a decent film, and it doesn't feel as long as it is, and it's entertaining. And then Avengers 4, or Part 2 of this, will be, okay, now there's stakes, which will be the elimination of the original 6 Avengers, and the sort of reconfiguration of the MCU. This doesn't change anything in the MCU. It'll be Part 4 that does. This is just, it's, again, getting back to how do you evaluate this, this is only one half of a 2-part story. So even just as part of a larger whole, we don't even know what the payoff is yet. So I think that will be what the payoff is, though, is in Part 4 we'll see the landscape of the MCU change to laying out the next 10 years and sort of saying goodbye to the previous 10. So that'll be interesting. So thanks for watching, guys. Be sure to leave your thoughts if you have any, and I'll see you next episode.